faced battles most never fought, pain, struggle, adversity. But here, we use that as fuel. This is the Battle Harder podcast, where we motivate, educate, and inspire warriors of life, veterans, survivors, leaders. We share stories and strategies to turn pain into progress. Here's your host, Coach Rob. Let's lock in and battle harder.
What is up, guys? It's your host, Coach Rob, here at the Battle Harder podcast, where I hope to motivate, educate, and inspire you to become the best version of yourselves. Now, this is going to be a fun episode, a yeehaw, giddy up cowboy episode like no other, because this man here, I met him as I had the honor to be on his podcast. And just like me, he's a good old Navy boy with lots of stories to share. And through that, we kind of became friends. He's repping my brand, Battlefitted, currently on camera right now. I'd like to introduce her to the show, the man that we're not going to give away his real name, Mr. Whiskey. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you having me. It's great to be here. And, this is my fourth or fifth podcast today. This is like 5 hours in a row recording. And so for some people, that means they're tired, lethargic. The momentum is going. I am excited to be here. I've been sharing stories all day about the military mental health, fitness, social media, all that stuff. So I'm ready to continue the conversation with you, especially having had you on my show, Couple O Nukes. It was a great time. And like you said, I've got some of your merch. I believe supporting each other in our communities, especially as veteran business owners, is super important. So I wear this everywhere I go. And when people ask about it, I say, hey, you gotta catch him, check out his show, check out his merch. I think it's so important, to help support one another. Earlier today, I recorded with a person. They have a nonprofit for helping veterans who make music have their own veteran radio channel and features all those songs. So stuff like that is just beautiful to see that community and support after the service.
Yeah, definitely. I think, networking is our biggest free thing to help us grow and meet amazing people and tell amazing stories. And just like you, man, the grind doesn't stop. You are my third and thank God final podcast for tonight. I had two before you, been cranking out the episodes to the point that now I have to release 2 episodes on Tuesday, 1 in the morning, 1 in the evening, to get all the backlog out of the system. So some problems are good to have. And if you want to talk about it, cool. If not, we will later. But I kind of missed the eye patch, man. It kind of put the whole look together. It made you look a little more badass and tougher. Like I would have just kept it anyway and just wore it on podcast only kind of thing and used it as like a cosplay costume or something. So
it's funny. People thought it was a fashion piece or a statement because they said it would be rude to assume that I had lost my eye in the Middle East or that I had been in a fight or quote that a birthday party had gone too wild. So people thought it was a fashion piece, and I thought it looked cool. I bought the cheapest one I could find on Amazon for like $1, and then it was a giant black circle that took up half my face. So I cut it to be about the size of my eye, and it was kind of janky looking, but it added to the rugged look. But if it was permanent, I would have done like Odin in the Marvel movies with the golden, like one piece eye patch.
Awesome.
Like I would have gotten something with an atom on it, or my branding, unless you made me a battle-fitted eye patch.
Maybe in the future, brother. But that's what I love about you. You're very authentic. You're very real. You're very fun. Like you really, I don't think care as far as criticism or, what people might think. You're a very authentic person. And that's what I love about you. So before we talk on about more things that happened in your life and things that went on, just give the audience a little bit about who you are and what you currently do.
Yeah, so I am first and foremost a dog dad. I got my dog in my lap right now.
Dog dads.
Yeah. I mean, I'll show her. She's sleeping, but I'll just pick her up. For those of you not watching, I've got my little Chihuahua baby. She call her Little Whiskey Shot. That's not her real name either, but yeah, when I'm not podcasting or speaking or writing or doing any of that stuff, I am with my dog, and that's basically my life outside of work. The reason work is my life is because I believe my work is super important. Suicide prevention, addiction recovery, physical fitness, physical health, mental health. I was saying on an interview earlier today, even if you took away the microphone and the camera, what I do and who I am is still all that stuff. It's important to me. I'm passionate about it, the faith as well. And so what I do, I'm a podcaster, speaker, preacher, comedian, author, and those are all just mediums, different ways to convey my messages, to network, to build community around the globe. That's what I think is important. My function in life is to serve and praise God. And the best way to do that is to take care of his children, to work with my brothers and sisters around the globe, whether it's sleep hygiene or career advice or financial advice, whatever I can provide. And obviously, I'm just one man, but that's why I believe the networking, like you said earlier, the community building and the podcasting and the writing is amazing. It allows you to reach so many people. Ironically enough, while I have a lot of episodes on how social media is bad for you, for your mental health, for your relationships, this and that, at the same time, like anything else, like AI, like guns, like anything, they are how people use them, right? And so social media can be a great tool for spreading the scripture, for spreading mental health advice, for spreading resources, for hosting shows like this. And so that's what I do. I don't claim any titles, other than Weeping Prophet, which I have tattooed on me in Hebrew. But outside of that, people call me an influencer. Sure. If that's what you think I do, if that's how you see me, people call me a cowboy. People call me preacher. People call me a podcaster. People call me unemployed, so I get called plenty of things as a podcaster. Some people call me a life coach. Sure. If you want to call me that, I'm just here to help and be of use to you. So however you want to call me, I've been called Dr. Whiskey, Captain Whiskey, Sir Whiskey, Mr. Whiskey, Mr. Whiskey. Mark Whiskey. I've been called lots of things. I've also been called some awful things, like you said, and some great things. There are some people who have hated on me, who feel like because I didn't serve my full contract, because I've got out of the military early, that I have no right to speak on veteran and military matters, that I'm walking stolen valor and that I should kill myself. I've gotten plenty of hate. And that was from my sister, by the way.
Oh,
And,
wow.
it's, yeah, but I'm not trying to be some hoorah military guy, but I do care a lot about that community because I serve with people, regardless of the amount of time I still connected with them. And there's still people, some of them who try to take their lives, some of them who did take their lives, some of them who call me right now and are still serving. And it's very important, that community, to me, because at the end of the day, you can take away the military label, you can take away the veteran label. There's still people. I don't even introduce myself as a veteran. I'm a person. And if you want to throw on the veteran electrician's mate nuclear operator, sure. If you want to throw on the podcaster, sure. But at the end of the day, I'm a person and I'm here to connect with people.
I love everything you said. And, on the first thing, I truly believe that God uses me as a mouthpiece to do what I'm passionate about and what I love, because not only is this therapy and has helped me get over my mental health issues, but I've always had a service mindset as long as I can remember. I mean, that's why I joined the Navy. That's why I became a police officer, to help those that couldn't help themselves, right? So I really believe that while maybe my faith has been lacking as far as practicing daily, or going to church or reading the Bible, I still believe that God is very active in my life to use me as a mouthpiece to maybe reach the non-believers, or reach the people that need help, that I could speak through them. So I applaud that. And I do have a title. I'm Coach Rob, and I'm going to be the king of personal development, and nobody's taking that title away from me. So um, I love everything you said. Let's just get into a little bit of background. Oh, and with the dog dad, yeah, I already had one dog, but we just got a Chihuahua also, and that little sucker loves me to death. It was kind of just
Nice.
a weird situation I can't really speak on, but essentially the owner was going to give away the dog, and he knew us. We watched the dog before. The dog's been in our lives. It's my next door neighbor. And so the wife, being the Latina Snow White that I call her, because she loves all animals, and we would literally have like
Right.
50 pets if we could. She's like, babe, can we keep this dog? And she expected me to say no, but something just told me, I'm like, man, this dog's been in this community for 7 years. He's known us for the 7 years. To just give him away to some random person,
Right.
how would you feel as a person if someone just said, oh, go live here now, and drop everything and know nobody and have all this new things? So I told her, I was like, no, we'll take the dog. And now we have the dog. So I have another little battle buddy with me. Just a amazing animal that he just wants love and attention. So pretty cool. How let's talk about your Navy career. Explain to my community that may not understand what your job title was, and how long did you serve, and why did you end up getting out?
Yeah, so the job title is electrician's mate, nuclear operator. A lot of words. I don't know what it means either, to be honest. There's a lot of stuff. Originally my resume is about 10 pages long at full length, which don't ever do that according to career advisors. But, it's because any job in the military, you're doing a lot of stuff at once. At least in the Navy, at least when I went through, we were all trained firefighters, all trained casualty combat care, damage control, right?
Yep.
And it's not always a mile deep, in terms of how much you're learning, but you learn a lot. You're standing watches that are for several different positions other than what you signed up for.
Yep.
And sometimes when you're serving, they create new stuff. They create new stuff. Like I was explaining to a ship, I was gonna say shipmate, a
Go ahead,
civilian
say it. Say
shipmate.
shit. So explain to the non-military members, because we use that term all the time. What is a shipmate?
Yeah, I mean, it. I honestly I couldn't define it to you. It's just someone you serve with in the Navy is the simplest way. If there's deeper meaning to it, then I
No,
lack that
you're
knowledge. But
it's
yeah,
just you're part
shipmate.
of your
Uh,
the people you work with, your community.
what's interesting, Coach Rob, because maybe it's different from when you and I served. Now, I said that genuinely. A lot of people, it's a derogatory term
Yeah,
nowadays in the Navy. It's like, okay, shipmate. A civilian friend of mine today, I just called him shipmate because sometimes it's just natural,
it just
especially
slips,
talking about the
right?
Navy stuff.
Right.
It's funny. I was on a subway system in Chicago, and I was explaining to a woman. She had no. She thought I was crazy. I was like, "Well, the guy told me to go topside because we were underground." I was like, "Well, I was told to go topside. Now I'm confused." And she was like, "Topside? The hell are you talking about?" So it's great. And I'm sure you had. I don't know if you call it the head or the
Yep.
bathroom. I
I
know.
do sometimes, just randomly, not that much anymore, but like I have to go to
Yeah.
the head, and like, yeah, it's
Oh yeah.
some.
With time, it fades out. But when you first get out, I was calling the head, and I was doing a whole bunch of Navy stuff. But I was gonna say, I was explaining to a friend today that I was captain of the Paw Patrol, and if you've ever seen a TV show, for anyone, it's a bunch of dogs with, I don't know if they have superpowers. They dress up as like policemen and construction
Yeah, they
workers and
have
stuff.
special
And
suits that they have, like mech suits that give them their
yeah,
power. So
yeah. And it was Plant Access Watch, it was radiation security, but it was called Paw Patrol. We named it Paw Patrol. So, imagine telling someone, "What are you doing in the military?" I was senior in rate Paw Patrol. I was the captain of the Paw Patrol. So we love that. We got little Paw Patrol stickers and hats and stuff from the show. So it was funny. But that was like a watch they created halfway through, and now everyone has to do it, and it sucks. Standing in front of a radioactive door for 8 hours saying, "No one go into space if you're not supposed to," and everyone's like, "Why would I go into a radiation space? I value my life." So, sometimes you're just sitting at a desk to answer the phone. So I've done from answering phone calls to controlling steam demand to changing the speed of the submarine to, breaker operation and gauge monitoring. The number one thing I did in the Navy, though, pretend to clean. I would say cleaning and pretending to clean, hurrying up and waiting, and taking a hit and keep going. Those were the number one things I did in the military. But yeah, electricians paint nuclear. It's the overall rate is nuclear operator. They've got machinist mate, electrician's mate, electronics technician, EOT. They're all different ones. I want to be a EOT, which is kind of chemistry side. Those were always my highest scores and interest field. Recruiter convinced me to do electrician's mate, and those were always my lowest scores. And it's interesting because the nukes have different personalities. Like it's kind of a pattern. So electricians mates tend to all have the same personalities and like mindsets. Same with the machinist mates, same with the EOTs. And no one ever knew I was an electrician. It was funny. Everyone always thought I was a mechanic because the mechanics were a lot louder, more social, interactive. Electricians were kind of strange, isolated. And I went through the whole program, and most people thought I was a machinist mate. And at graduation, when they said electrician's mate, nuclear operator, whiskey, they were like, "You were an electrician this whole time? We thought you were a mechanic like us. You were always sitting having lunch with us and coking and joking." And I was like, You guys never asked. I mean, I don't know what to tell you, So yeah, it's a lot of different stuff. It's if you're on a submarine, an aircraft carrier, it differs a little bit, and each ship is kind of different in its own self because of when it was made and how things are set up. So
Yeah.
some electricians mates have slightly different responsibilities than me. But in a nutshell, you're in charge of reactor operations, safety, and biggest thing, steam and electricity safety. Keeping everything in control. Not everything is automated, but everything that is automated requires you. So, you got to keep an eye on everything.
I love that. And you brought up some guy, you just bringing back the memories, coking and joking, pretend to clean. So
Yeah.
when I first came in, I made a mistake of coming in undesignated, and for my non-military community, that means that Coach Rob didn't have a job. And when you don't have a job in the Navy, they put you in the worst place possible. They send you straight to the fleet, to some ship, and basically you're an E nothing. So your rank is basically E1, but they call you E nothing. And basically you do the worst of the jobs: hang over the side of the ship and paint, go in a freaking little rowboat and scrape barnacles off the ship,
Were you a
clean
bilge
toilet.
diver?
No, luckily I didn't have to do that.
Okay.
But standing on the forecastle, the front of the ship, when it pulls into port, and handling the lines, that's the ropes that we tie to the pier, or making sure that the anchor chain doesn't like snap your face off, and needle gunning. So
Yeah.
if you guys don't know what needle gunning is, it's this horrible little machine that hurts your hands, that has a bunch of, like, they actually look like needles, and you use it to get the rust off the ship. And so doing all the dirty jobs, and I remember, just like you said, like pretending, like, are you still cleaning? Oh yeah, I'm cleaning, I'm shining the
Yeah.
bell, or I'm
But we've
swabbing the
done this
deck.
45 minutes every day
Yeah,
this week and 2 hours
right.
every Thursday.
Right.
So yeah, it's as clean as it can get. And for all my Navy listeners, I think he misspoke. He meant Foxcastle. the
I always call it
the
the forecastle,
forecastle.
but whatever.
Yeah.
Potato. Listen, guys, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back with Mr. Whiskey, we're going to talk a little more on his Navy career. We'll talk a little bit about some mental health stuff, why he adopted the cowboy hat that is synonymous with his persona, and everything that he is. So we'll be right back. Stay tuned. They told you to stay comfortable. You chose the battle. Battle Fitted is for the few who live by discipline in the gym, in the mirror, and in the mind. This isn't just fitness, it's transformation. From our coaching and mindset resources to apparel that speaks without saying a word, to keynotes that shake rooms awake, we train warriors, not followers. No fluff, no shortcuts, just real work, real change. If you're tired of talking about it, prove it. Lock in your first workout, grab your gear, book the mission at battlefittedbrand.com. And we're back. And you know what, man? I didn't even think about it. I need to add you to that commercial because you were at Battle Fitted Hard all day, every day. So how long were you in the Navy, and what led you to get out?
Yeah, I was in for 3 years, and there were a lot of factors behind my separation. So it was medical separation for mental health for a lot of different things, but there was also a turning point. So when I first joined, I was 17, and it was because my parents said, "You're joining." It wasn't a yes or
Wow.
no, it was, "You're joining." So I never wanted to go. I had a great respect for the men and women in the military, was always a very patriotic person by birth. And I just knew it wasn't for me. I just knew my personality, the way I had been raised too. It mirrored my home a lot, with the conformity, with the controlling, with you know, the way it ran. But I ended up, having to go in, and at first I hated it, but I had a turning around point at some point where nuke school, you get there and everyone says, they give this speech, "Listen, y'all are the best of the best. You're 1% of 5% of people who can join the military. None of you tried in high school. You're all just natural geniuses, right?" And everyone's like, "Yeah, you're right." And they're like, "This is not that place. You have to try. You have to study. You have to work. You have to actually be a hardworking person and actually learn. This isn't just going to be like, oh, you kind of sit in class, you have to pay attention and you pass. And so many of us were like, whatever, man, like that maybe that was you, petty officer, not me. And one of the highest failure rates, you know, a high suicide rate. It is not a joke. Like they were telling the truth. And so was like, I was not the most try hard at first. I did a lot of work, but there was a lot of stuff I wanted to take care of and, you know, prioritize. And so I made it by. And then during power school, the second part, I actually tried and put in more effort and I started doing successful. I started to get this Hoo-yah Navy spirit, but not too much. After that, I had this terrible heartbreak, the kind that changes a man forever. And I ended up 6% behind at prototype while working on a submarine. And there's an expected curve of when you will complete training in about whatever, it's like 6 months or so. And there's a curve and you're either ahead or behind the curve or just on the line. And you want to be in the green, you want to be ahead. But most people were behind, you know, by like 5%, you know, because it's just a difficult program. Again, you lose a lot of people along the way for academic failures, you know, and a lot of mental health issues. Out of the first 30 people I was with, maybe only 5
Oh,
or
wow.
less made it to prototype. Then out of the prototype, only a few got sent to the fleet. And out of the fleet, only a few stayed in. The nuclear community has a lot of issues that need to be addressed. But after the heartbreak, I was 6% behind. And after having a good leader, only one of the only good leaders I had in the military, because most of them were bad. This guy was a good guy, cared a lot about his people. After some conversations with him and after going to a church and talking with a priest and everything and figuring things out, I ended up over 20% ahead from
Oh, wow.
6% behind. So I was one of the furthest ahead people. And I had 8 letters of recommendation from the civilian in charge of the whole nuclear program, from a captain, from a master chief, from petty officers to get promoted. I had meetings with them all and everything to get promoted to this special position. They call it, they changed the names of it. It used to be JSI, Junior Staff Instructor. And then at some point it was SPU, Staff Pickup, right? They had all these different terms for it. But the idea was, hey, you're so smart. You worked hard. You know what you're doing. We're going to take you and you're actually going to stay here and be an instructor now and
Oh,
teach
wow.
the nuke school. So to be able to learn everything and then teach it, it required a huge skill level.
Right.
And everyone told me it was basically guaranteed for me because I was over 20% ahead. Most people were 5% behind. And I had put in the time. I was such a Hoo-yah Navy spirit, which people crapped on me for that. You know,
Right.
if you hate the military, you get torn apart by the higher ups. And if you like the military, you get clowned on by everyone who hates the military. You can never win, which we could have a whole conversation about that because the
Definitely.
mentality of people in the military is what kills it more than anything. Well, I stayed 4 hours extra every day. You were doing 12-hour shifts, and technically they said you are not allowed to do much longer. They'll allow up to 14 hours. Otherwise, you get written up. So I got in trouble multiple times for doing too many hours, but I was
Wow.
determined to help people not get kicked out of their program. There are several nuclear sailors who were going to get kicked out of their program. And because I stayed 4 extra hours and tutored them and got them checkouts and got them meetings with petty officers and pulled strings, they were able to pass and make it to the nuclear fleet. I was a mentor. I was an instructor. That's what I do now through my show and through my writing and everything, right? That was my personality. It always has been. And I loved it. I loved the Navy. I wanted to stay and make an impact on all those sailors who were struggling. And I had a high GPA, but they have over promoted 2 people wanted the position and they picked like 42 or 52 people. So all the other people were voluntold. And this was 2 cycles before my class. But I was like, well, it shouldn't matter because we're understaffed. Because every staff member there said we're understaffed, we're overworked, XYZ. Well, they decided, we kind of picked a lot of people last cycle. So we're only going to pick 2 people for the position for your class. So now my chances went from 1 in 52 or whatever, you know, they're picking 52 candidates to 2. That narrows it down a lot because I wasn't the only person who wanted the position.
Right.
The people they picked had broken the record for fastest qualification. He was like 80% ahead.
Wow.
He qualified, he set a record. But He did so by screwing people over, by being a Blue Falcon, by being a kiss up, by being a jerk. No one liked him. He screwed people over to get to where he was successful. I raised people up with myself as I went along. I stayed and I 4 hours a day. So I was working 16-hour shifts sometimes. That was my life. I went home, walked my dog, went to bed, and then I was back. I worked so much that when I slept, all I could dream was about being on a submarine. I had night terrors about the submarine life, about the military life every single night. And then I worked it all day, 16-hour shifts. And so when it came down to it, there was a spot for me still given away for DEI because we need Asian people, because we have Black instructors, we have Hispanic instructors, we don't have enough Asian instructors. And sorry, Mr. Whiskey, being a handsomely Italian doesn't count. I got screwed, and it was foreshadowed to me. I had one of the instructors who had been a student who became an instructor. I said, "How did you do it, man? Like, please give me, if you have any advice, I'm really pursuing this. You see how hard I'm working." He goes, "Listen, Mr. Whiskey." He goes, "I didn't do anything special. I fit a special billet. Let me ask you this. Have you ever seen another Indian in the Navy or the nuclear Navy?" I said, "No, sir, you're the only one. And, that's awesome." And he goes, "Yeah, it's awesome politically into Big Navy when they put me in that billet and made me a staff instructor so that we can show a diverse climate here." So it had already been foreshadowed to me. But me thinking, I was like, well, I won't get picked because of my race, right? Straight white male. But I never thought it would screw me over. I didn't worry much about it. I said, okay, that guy got picked because he was Indian. Well, it doesn't change my life. Well, it did when someone got picked for what I worked hard for.
Yeah.
I gave so much time to the Navy and I got told to go respectfully F myself. And so after that, I was already done with the military. And then when I got put onto a ship with a high suicide rate that was under investigation with toxic command climate, when I was pulled away from my fiance that I was about to marry, all that stuff really started to snowball downhill. And I found out the more I gave to the Navy, the more they just took away with nothing in return. And there was so much more to do outside of the Navy than inside of it, because I thought about 20 years. I thought about it a lot because I had loved it at one point. I thought about trying to become a captain so I could change the command climate, so I could be a leader impact. But every instructor and every person above me I met who was getting out 10 years, 15 years. Why? I just can't take it anymore. I can't take the command climate. Why don't you stay in and make the change? Because I've spent 10 years already trying to make a change, and there's always someone above me who ruins it. There's always so much red tape. There's always other people. And having a division of 5 people and changing their life, yeah, it's great. But guess what, Mr. Whiskey? I'm getting out. I've had people on my show, they were at 19 years, 18 years, said, I can't do another day. I don't care about the benefits. I'm out.
Well,
They offered $120,000 re-enlistment for 2 years for nuclear operators, and people said, no, no, no. And I was on a show earlier today, and I said, there's no price tag big enough to buy people into the military. The incentive has to be lifestyle. It has to be all the other stuff, because the lifestyle is the biggest issue. It's the mental health crisis. Civilians always think it's combat PTSD, it's combat this, combat that. The combat people are important, but they're a small fraction of the population. A majority of the military is in combat, but they are dealing with isolation, with command climates, with the distance, with mental health, with addiction, with suicide in their community and with themselves. And so I'll pause there for some reflection.
that's all amazing and so much truth. And I think, the people that have amazing careers, there's very few and far between that doesn't have some sort of struggle or pain or mental health issue or something they didn't overcome. My best friend made it 20 years, and I can't even share on the show some of the things that happened to him while in the Navy. And he really had to come to a point of, am I going to continue this on or not? Because it's not easy. And I don't think the civilian community realizes that. You brought up a valid point about like PTSD and combat veterans. Like you said, that is a small section of things. And man, like you're bringing about memories of people in my command during the time that got a promotion either due to being a kiss ass or, like you said, a Blue Falcon. And for my civilian community, a Blue Falcon is pretty much a buddy fucker. So someone that screws over
Yeah.
their coworkers, friends, they'll screw over their family just to get a promotion when that promotion, doesn't mean everything. And without getting into politics, this is why DEI. So if people don't understand DEI, this is why they're getting rid of it, because everything should be based on merit. My kids are half black, half white. My former ex-wife is Jamaican. She's a black woman. I never saw color. I only saw merit. And even today, when I teach my kids and I coach my kids, I tell them, like, you have a disadvantage. Like, I tell them, you have a disadvantage in being black, but use that as a superpower, because how you carry yourself, the knowledge you have, how you act out in public, how you speak with others, how you perform at work, and being a responsible, productive adult in society, that's what gets you ahead of the game. I've always believed in merit over color or religion or who you know.
Hmm.
Um, and that's crazy that we were in. What year did you go in?
I went in at 2020, and so from 2020 to 2023, and so it was, I don't even remember who's in charge. It was a election year when I went in, I believe.
So
So
I want my community to really listen to this and think about it. He went in, not too long ago. I went in freaking 1997. So 1997,
the same issue.
2020, and nothing, literally nothing has changed. When I got to my ship, I was threatened to be thrown overboard. I was harassed. I was bullied. I was called dirtbag for no reason. I was made fun of for having faith in God. I was on a ship
Mhm.
at the time with nothing but men, because they didn't integrate women on ships yet at that time. So I always tell everybody, and they don't believe me, it was like being in jail. Like, literally, like,
Yeah.
my life was threatened on a daily basis. I was pulled out of my rack. I was beaten. Like, I had officers show me their junk and get drunk and act inappropriate. Like, my trauma and my PTSD is not, I'm a combat vet, and it's not from combat. It's from everything else that happened to me while I was in the Navy. Bad leaderships screwing me over, bad leaders making me be in trouble for things that I didn't do, like not accepting responsibility for their people. So,
Yeah.
just think about that when you're dealing with a veteran, or you might know a veteran, or you're talking about veterans or talking to veterans. These invisible wounds are completely in different forms. And one person's trauma, Mr. Whiskey's trauma, isn't bigger than my trauma, and my trauma isn't bigger than his trauma. But here we are, instead of letting us suffer on that and let us hold us back and hold us down, we are dealing with it head on, and we're talking about it and we're speaking about it to help other people. So I have to ask, what is your relationship with your parents? Because that's pretty crazy at 17. And I didn't even know they could do that, like to force you to say, you have to do this, because I'm sure you had other hopes of going to college or maybe doing something else. What is your relationship like with your parents? And if you don't want to get into too deep, like, basically what mental health issues happened that led you to get out? Was it just a totality of the circumstances of everything?
So what I want to just real quick is just one thing that you mentioned that I feel like you talked about, to stay in for 20 years, you have to endure a lot of BS. And we had Christopher Brewer was on my show the other day, and what he said, very sadly, is that most people get out before their prime time in the military because they just can't take it anymore. Because it can be a lot to endure. I've had I was talking today to people who said we kept holding on, waiting for the next command. And in
Yep.
20 years, I never found that good command.
Mm.
So you can spend a lot of time in your life. And, I had people accuse me of being a fraud and saying the reason I didn't get the position was exactly how I reacted when I didn't get it, which was, oh, so now you're not going to try hard and give to the Navy because you didn't get the position. So you were only a good worker and valuable when you had an incentive. And I said, it's not that. It's the fact that why should I?
You
It's been proven that I gave everything and they took everything and got nothing in return, and that they're just going to keep taking. And sometimes you can give a lot and eventually you get a return. But like I said, it's all dependent on your leadership. As far as my parents, so yeah, I mean, you can join. My sister signed her paperwork for the military when she was like 16. and she was in the
Wow.
DEP program, delayed entry program, which is,
Right.
for those who don't know what it is, basically you meet at the recruiting office. Everywhere is different. I know for my sister and I think it was like once a month, the first Wednesday or whatever you go. You're supposed to PT this stuff. Mine was like kind of when COVID was first starting. So like I didn't even do that basically, but a lot of people will go, they'll PT, they meet other recruits going out. My youngest sister, she started when she was 16. So, and she wasn't shipping out. You couldn't until after she graduated. So she was like the leader of the DEP program, and more people came in and left before her than you could imagine.
Wow.
But my mother and my father, yeah. So my whole life was set up for the Coast Guard Academy. And I will say I don't regret anything in my life because everything has lined up for me to do what we're doing right now. And I would never trade that away. But if I knew what I knew now about officers and Coast Guard life, man, I'm stupid for throwing that away. That was a good opportunity. But between summer programs and my parents setting me up for that, that's what my life was, going to the Coast Guard Academy. That was the only point of my life. And it was all because when I was 5 years old, I saw a Coast Guard helicopter fly past the beach. I was like, oh, that's so cool. I'd love to do that. My parents took that as that's the only thing you're allowed to do in life from now on. Kids change their mind all the time. Rob, you have
Yep.
kids. You know that kids say, I said I want to be an astronaut, a biologist, a chemist, a cowboy, an astronaut, all it, and I repeated myself there for a reason because kids will go back and forward and stuff like that. I wanted to be all kinds of stuff growing up. Probably same
Look,
with you. And sometimes kids had that one dream, right? But that was my parents always said that. Before I could even conceptualize about careers and stuff. I was 5 years old. I was a little kid. I saw a helicopter on the beach. What do you think little boys do? Whoa, that's cool. I know little kids who they see the dump truck. They're like, wow, that's cool. My parents didn't say, hey, you want to be the garbage man? Good. We're gonna set you up for that. So it's I think it was a lot to do with my parents' traumatic relationship with each other and their parents. My mother had a perfect gunmanship score. She wanted to be a Marine. She called herself the real life Wonder Woman in Electra. And she had 6 kids instead. She had 2 marriages, stayed at home mom.
Wow.
And I think it's, guess what? Because both my youngest sisters never, ever, never would have expected them to go into the military. But after my mom raised them, my dad and mom kind of got separated somewhat. They both went into the military. No coincidence. It's not a coincidence at all. And my mom says, I had nothing to do with it. My sister's like, she didn't influence us. Okay. And it's funny, my one younger sister, she joined when I was in boot camp, so I couldn't tell her not to do it. And then I was in and I was like, well, I would have told you not to do it. She was always a bookworm college girl. And my youngest sister always wanted to own her own bakery. And I was going to re-enlist to pay for her to get a bakery. But she decided, oh, I'm going to go in the Navy, which broke my dad's heart. He said, out of all the branches, I won't repeat what he said, but the Navy was his least favorite for a lot
Wow.
of reasons. He would have preferred she went Air Force. He would have preferred both my sisters went Air Force. And I won't share my one sister's story, but part of why she got out was because of sexual harassment in the Navy,
Wow.
unfortunately, and some other stuff. Basically, she went to her chief, said, hey, these guys are sexually harassing me like really bad. And here's all the texts and everything in the group chat, in the military work group chat. And the chief said, I would take those as a compliment. And so terrible leadership. Talk about terrible leadership. So she was about to re-enlist. She was like a few days from signing the paperwork. Goodbye. Bye, chief. Not dealing with that. So my parents, I think they set me up for the Coast Guard Academy. And when I was working as an ice cream salesman on the beach at the Jersey Shore, people would always ask me, are you saving money for college? What's the plan? And I said, well, my parents are putting me to the Coast Guard Academy. That's that. My dad's got people in government to get me the letters of recommendation you need. At the time, you needed at least 2. And I went to these summer programs. My parents spent thousands of dollars on these summer programs to prepare me. And they said, well, what do you want to do, Mr. Whiskey? I said, me,
Right.
who's Mr. Whiskey, And that started the seeds of independent thinking. I grew up in a household of conformity where there was domestic violence, sexual abuse, verbal and emotional abuse, religious weaponization, a household of chaos. So
Wow.
I never thought to think independently. My dad picked my friends for me, my enemies for me, right? First day of public school after private school, I made friends. Dad said, nope, I'm a police officer. I arrested their parents or I've dealt with these kids. You're not allowed to be friends with them. Set me up for a path of the whole town being my enemy growing up. So one time I snuck out of the house. He hunted me down in a cop car. It was to see a girl, of course. Every guy has that point in his life. But yeah. And so when I made the decision to not go to the Coast Guard Academy, parents flipped out, of course, lots of screaming and fighting. Not my dad. My dad was always in the background. My mom was the one who was always talking about it. Dad kind of just said, go take care of this. And she would take care of it. And so from there, I just wanted to work. College, my parents never taught me about college. School didn't really prepare me because when I got to school and the guidance counselor said, what do you want to do? I said, I'm going to Coast Guard Academy, no ifs, ands, or buts. So they never prepared me for college. So I had this twisted view of it in my mind that it's, you're enslaved to your books. You're in college classes for 10 hours every day, Monday through Saturday, and life sucks. Come to find out, some college students do 2 classes a week for 2 hours each, and that's it. So I said, what about community college? And I can go figure stuff out. That gives me a year or two to figure out what I want to major in. And my dad said, nope, community college is for minorities and bums. You're not allowed there.
Wow.
You're a whiskey. You can't go there. It would be embarrassing and shameful. So they said, yeah, got to. And when the COVID came and shut down the working world, my dreams of entrepreneurism and working were gone. The world was shut down. It was a crazy time to start a business or work. You couldn't even work for a job. Everyone said, hey, we're doing virtual stuff or whatever it was. And I certainly couldn't stay with my parents. And so I ended up going Air Force. The day before I ship out and sign the paperwork to be a photojournalist, they say, hey, I know I said I guaranteed that position, but actually I never said the word guaranteed. I said I could most likely, possibly, very reasonably get you that billet, but I can't. I want you to be a cryptolinguist. You're going to learn another language and be in an airplane for 14 hours translating to pick up possible threats. So that's a very different thing. I signed up for photojournalist. All right. I was supposed to take pictures, interview people. That's a very different thing. And I said, no. He said, well, there's other jobs in the Air Force if you're interested. And I said, yeah, I'd like to look. Parents said, nope. If you don't take that #1 job, you're a disgrace, you're dishonored, you're out of the family. It was
Wow.
always just so much about their personal pride. And the ironic part, Coach Rob, they've got no friends or family to show me off to brag about. It was just their own like sick personal pride. And so I walked away from the Air Force. I was like, no, I don't want to do the military. I was already lied to before I even got in. Imagine when you're
Right.
in and they own you. I mean,
Right.
if you're listening and you had a recruiter who lied to you, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Or they misled you, or they withheld information, or they, however they want to phrase it, it happens a lot. And so I went, and then COVID came. I tried to run away and join this motorcycle gang in Florida with my father's cousin who was a criminal. He
Oh,
stopped
wow.
me. He said, Mr. Whiskey, you're a good man, good-hearted, you're genuine, and you're smart. You're very smart. He goes, you would be throwing your life away to join this motorcycle gang where we do cocaine and drink. We bounce around halfway homes and beat people in Florida. You would be throwing your life away. I can't let you do that. And honestly, he's a good man for that. Looking back on that, at the time, I was frustrated with him. How could you do this? That's stupid. And this is my life, my choice. But he made a mature decision for a man who spends his life in and out of prison and does cocaine and rides motorcycles and is always on the run doing crazy stuff. That was really mature of him, and I have a lot of respect for him to this day for that, because it would have been throwing my life away. It wasn't aligned with who I am. So I said, all right, well, I'll join the Navy then. My mom kept convincing me, pressuring me, Navy, 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 Navy. Okay. I go there for photojournalism. Last minute, oh, you can't do photojournalism. My bad. So sorry. Again, all right. I go for underwater welding. I'm preparing for that. At some point, take the ASVAB. Forget underwater welding. Mr. Whiskey, you're a nuclear operator. Okay. Sure. They said because it's but so it's the worst job you could do in the Navy. It's the hardest, longest hours, and worst lifestyle, highest suicide rate. I said, well, that's not a good pitch, but it has the most benefits. And I said to myself, this is my logic. If what he had said had been true, I already don't want to be in the military. I might as well full send it and do the nuclear Navy and get the most benefits out of it. I'm already stuck here at this point. Let's get the most out of it. Coach Rob, you could be an E nothing and I could be a nuclear operator. We get the same VA benefits, dental, medical, schooling, right? There were no extra benefits unless you wanted to be a full-time nuclear operator post-military. That was the only benefit, was my resume, specifically for blue-collar nuclear work. But I didn't
Well,
want to do that post-military, right? I don't
right.
use any of my nuclear operation skills nowadays. But he had said there were so many extra benefits, higher pay, this and that. Guess what? An E5 mailman makes more than me as an E4 nuclear operator. I'll tell you that much, right? And we go to the same dentist and the same medic. But guess what? He doesn't work holidays and he doesn't work overnights and he doesn't work 12 hours. So I got bamboozled.
Yeah.
It was for the quote extra benefits. It wasn't, and the incentives of the bonuses. Like I said, there's a big price tag for a reason. If you're joining the military, because it got so bad that when I was in the galley one day, these two guys who were, as you call them, me nothings, they sat down with me. They had $25,000 sign-on bonuses to be undes. That's insane. They almost had as much as my nuclear bonus was after tax at that time to be undes and only do like a 2 or 3 year contract, all because the Navy was hurting. So the
Yeah.
price tags fluctuate. And I've learned the bigger the price tag, the worse it is in the military, right? Unless it's something, very specific that you want to do. And so that's kind of how I ended up in the role my parents had. Was basically, it was always just Coast Guard Academy all the way. I turned away from that. The world said, well, you can't work. And parents said, you can't do college. So I got recirculated back to the military. Air Force screwed me over. So I ended up in the Navy.
Man, that is you gave me too much to unpack, man. I don't think we have time to cover all this, but
Yeah.
I just think, after hearing all this, you wanted to get away and you wanted to get out of that shitty situation in your household. So I don't think your mom really broke you. You just saw that as an exit. And I want to tell everybody listening to this, even to this day, because the same sort of thing happened to me. I got freaking taken for by my recruiter. If you want to join the military, okay? If you want to join the military, I will never tell anybody not to join the military. For all the bad it did to me, it did more good. And that's what I learned, is that not letting the bad things define me, and remember the good times and the things that I did get to do and experience outweigh the bad. But if you're going to go into the military, first of all, bring someone with you that has been in the military and knows what goes on with recruiters. Even better if you could bring an actual recruiter with you into the military. Don't go through it alone. Research, I'm sure it's on Google, ChatGPT, whatever. Research all the jobs in the branches. And if you can't get the one that you want, like maybe have a top 3, but don't settle. Mr. Whiskey settled. I settled. Me being a dum-dum, I was like, okay, yeah, give me whatever. And they sure did. They gave me the scooper right up the pooper, so to speak. So take someone with you, or at least talk to someone that's going to sit down with you and go over everything. Get or fight for what you want. Don't fight for the biggest signing bonus, because the money is not worth the job you have to do for years and years on end if you're miserable. And just really think about it, like focus on it, take some time in silence on it, make sure it's a right fit for you, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, and make sure that once you do get in, that use everything to your benefit. Like, even if you don't want to go to school because you can get extra money. There's so many benefits that we just don't take advantage of because, one, no one really teaches us or tells us, but we're just so miserable while being in the military. We don't really want to take on anything else. And, there's so many things. Like, I would be more apt to take a dream duty station versus money. Like, so that's another thing. When you go in there, whether it's the Air Force, Army, Navy, Marine Corps, if you want to go overseas and live overseas, find out which branch has the place you want to go and fight to get there versus a job, and have those experiences. But be prepared for the worst, because the military has been broken probably even before I was in. It was broken in 97 to 2007 when I was in and got out. It was broken recently, all the way up to 2023. So things aren't really changing at all. So you have to
The
be very.
Vietnam veterans on my show have said the same stuff that we've said, the people right after them. So it's truly sad to see that everyone can see what the issues are. It's just not the right people who know what they are. The highest ups in government and in the Navy and in the Army, they need to know this stuff and put forward a change. All us veterans know it. We talk to each other and stuff. We need the people with the power and the money and the politics to make change know it.
And you're exactly right. And you did say something earlier that is the truth as well. A lot of good leaders, the people that we respect in the military, they try to change it and they want to change the community, but they go through so much red tape. They go from the bad supervisors above them. They go for the pushback, because how dare we make our community better and more apt for us to want to stay in and be happy and healthy, that at some point they just break and give up, and it's like, it's not worth it. It's not going to change. That we don't have the right people in power that actually want to fight for this stuff. It's crazy to me. And, this has been going on forever. So, with your dad being a police officer and me being a former police officer, usually cops are either two ways. They're either chill, relaxed, but they'll, guard and protect their family, friends, and loved ones and always live by integrity and do the right thing. Or they'll just be complete douchebags on society and use their power for everything for bad. Did your dad ever try to get you to be a police officer? And was that something you ever wanted to do?
So I've thought about it on my own personal accord when I got out of the military, but I feared that it would be the same kind of environment as the military.
It is.
And so I ended up leaning more towards maritime fire and rescue here in Savannah, Georgia. They've got a team on the river and out in the ocean. So firefighting seemed a little less military like than the, police. But my father, here's what I have to say. He wasn't a police in nature or by birth. He did it to appease his mother, who wanted a traditional Catholic Irish Italian son, right? By nature, as a kid, he was always drinking, hanging out with strippers and cocaine and driving Hellbirds and Thunderbirds and whatever, Hellcats, whatever, all kinds of stuff, right? He was a maniac and a menace, and he still is today. Before a certain amount of time, there's only one thing more powerful than alcohol in this world to him, and that was his mother. He had an uncanny relationship with her, extremely close, very strange bond, and it had a power over him, so much so that he was a police officer for 25 years to make her happy. But
Um,
it was never who he was, you know? Now, did he go out of his way to abuse power and be a jerk? I wouldn't say so. Has he told me some funny stories about him giving some people a hard time? Yeah, but it's never been towards innocent people. And I'm not saying mistreatment of guilty people is good either, but he never went out of his way to abuse power. And I have a lot of respect for the policemen. I know in the past few years they have gotten so much hate and disrespect and just so much stereotyped onto them, so much grouping. But as Ricky D. Sluter said on my show, Couple of Nukes, he said, you know why I'm a jerk? Because I either die a hero or go home a racist. He said, those are the only two labels I get. I die a hero
mm,
or I go home a racist. And so that really changed my perspective, and having heard some of the stuff my father dealt with, having talked to other police officers and prison guards about some of the people they work with, they see some of the most horrible things. Their days run on people's worst days. I've talked to first responders from EMTs to police officers. They see mutilated bodies in ways that you could never imagine, from car crashes to murders. And some of the people locked up, I've talked to some prison guards. Some of the people locked up have done some truly sickening, wicked things. I don't even want to repeat it, and they do it to old people, they do it to children, they do it to women, they do it to whoever. Some of them are cannibals. It's insane. And so my father, I know that he's been through a lot. And sometimes when he's gotten very drunk, he's shared some of the trauma and PTSD. And I feel very bad for some of the things he's witnessed and had to do, pulling 5-year-old girls with autism out of a lake and they're drowned and he gives them CPR and all their ribs crack, stuff like that. And they die in your hands. And the father's like, why couldn't you save her? Stuff like that. I'm sure you've dealt with some stuff, whether it was responding to suicide calls, to ambush attacks. There was recently an attack. A guy called the firefighting team, and then sniped them down in Idaho just a few days ago. It is a dangerous job now more than ever. And so my father, I do give him a lot of grace and mercy for some of his drinking, because also on top of the trauma, it was the rotating shift work. He was part of the cops that they didn't know. They were trying to find the ideal schedule. So he underwent so many different changes to his sleep. It wasn't just rotating shift work. At one point in life, he was on day shift 12 hours a month straight, night shift a month straight. At a different point in his life, they had 3 days on, 3 days off, 3 nights on, 3 nights off. He went through so much change that the alcohol was the only way he could sleep, to deal with the trauma, to sleep, like I said, to deal with people. Part of the reason he raised us in such a controlled bubble was he was afraid of the world. He saw the worst sides of it. I don't blame him. But you need to know that there's good in the world, and it's better to equip your children with exposing them to those horrors than to try to hide them from it. Because especially nowadays with phones, you can't hide your children from that. They're going to grow up one day and they're going to leave. And if they're not prepared, then you've kind of just failed. You spent all that time hiding them only for them to be exposed anyway and fail. So I have a lot of respect for first responders and military people alike.
Yeah, I honestly think that. So, after I got out of the Navy, and I think we talked about this on your show a little bit, I was a police officer for, well, counting Navy time and my last duty station as a cop, about 17 years worth of law enforcement experience. And being a cop, especially federal, it's a paramilitary organization. It operates just like being in the military, but you're not, necessarily getting the good pay. You're not getting certain things paid for you and everything. And so my last job, I was at Seminole Police Department here in Florida, and I started in April of last year, and I was only there for 4 months. Like, so this is what's crazy, is like, this is going to be like my 1 year anniversary from being away from the police department.
Wow.
But I quit in July. So I was only there for 4 months. And when people like talk to me, they think like I'm stupid, or like, why would I do that? Like, why did I even take the job? And a lot of things we talk about is, whatever you do in the Navy, most of the time, most of us, when we get out, that's what we do for a living, because that's all we know. So for me as a military police officer, it was just easier to become a cop and get a job quickly.
Mm.
But I didn't realize at the time how much trauma I had with the Navy, how much trauma I had with my other police departments. And then I get to, this police department, and I'm like 46 at the time. So I'm an adult. I've been in law enforcement for a long time. And I get there and I'm treated like absolute dog crap, right? Like, they didn't want me there. First of all, the place that I was at had a super, super high turnover rate. Nobody wanted to stay there. Everybody there was miserable. So when you work at a job in a constant community where everybody's miserable, you become miserable. And then working on a reservation with Native Americans is not an easy task. It's like 5 times worse than just dealing with normal everyday people. Then on top of that, you have to deal with the criminals that come on the property and do the things that they do. Then on top of that, you have a guy who's older than you that's been a cop for 20 years and he hates his life, so he treats you like crap. And then when you can't remember a 10 code or a traffic violation code, like, why are you so stupid? Why can't you remember this? And you're like, this is a lot of stress. Like, I know I'm supposed to be in a high stress environment during my field training, but I'm a grown ass man with experience. So like, I don't understand the need for you to treat me like this. And what happens is, us as police officers or firefighters, first responders in general, we see the horror, we're treated like shit, we're talked to like shit. So we numb the pain with alcohol or drugs or doing things that are basically illegal. Going into a trap where we use our power for bad, not good. And so the second day on the job, a young man took his life in the casino parking lot. I had to process the scene. I had to see the bullet exit wound in his brain matter in his car, had to take the gun that he still had his finger on the trigger away from him and deal with everything, seeing this young man's face over and over and over again. going through his items, seeing that he was a security guard, not understanding why he took his life, wanting to understand why he took his life. And
Mm.
I still see his face every once in a while, and it's just so random. Like, so I had more trauma and more PTSD. And I remember one of the things that I try to help veterans and first responders with, but definitely first responders, we're in cop mode all day, every day. Like, we don't turn it off because that could cost you your life. And so when you get home, you don't know how to turn that cop mode off. And so you go through that threshold after seeing someone kill themselves or processing a crime scene or dealing with a murder or a rapist or whatever. And any little thing sets you off. And not because you're an asshole or you hate your partner, because you've just dealt with something real scary and frustrating and you don't know how
Yeah.
to control your emotions. So you come home and like maybe dinner's not made, and then it becomes a whole thing. Why didn't you make dinner? How come you don't love me? How come you don't do this? And the person that is on the other side of that, they're like, whoa, like what the F is going on? Like, I don't deserve this. Like, this is scary. You're getting crazy. Now you're getting angry, and that makes us more angry. And then that's when the divorce and suicide and everything happens.
Hmm.
So for me, not only being able to do what I love and finally find my passion and my purpose, I think quitting saved my life. I decided most of us as cops, we're hard headed. We're not going to quit. We're not going to give up. We're just going to suffer in silence, suffer through the pain until it destroys us. And quitting, like, it saved my life. And it took a lot of guts because I'm getting paid like $80,000 a year to be a cop, but then getting paid, shoot, like $50 an hour in overtime. Uh, as soon as I get through field training, get my own police car, get more stuff. And I remember, like, I came home, I was just exhausted, I'm crying, and my wife's like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "I don't think I can do this. I just don't think I have the mental capacity for this anymore," because I was already negative and depressed and angry and frustrated, and I was just living this every day. And thank God that my wife loves me and supports me and knows that quitting a job with no income is a very scary thing, but my mental health is more important, to say, okay, go ahead and quit. And that next day I went in, I talked to my sergeant, and I'm like, look, I thank you for the opportunity, but I just can't do this anymore. And I gave back all my stuff and I walked away.
I think, so many people have this negative stigma around quitting. I think that's why it's important to say you chose to leave, you know,
I
because
chose to
quitting
live.
people, yeah, you chose to leave. It's not that you gave up, because of all these negative traits. You chose to leave. You chose to put yourself first. And I think that's important. And like you said, yeah, we've talked on my show about, in our particular case with Ricky D. Saluter, the wife and kids were like, why won't you share anything from work with us? Because of some of the stuff we just talked about. That's not stuff you want to share with your wife or
Right,
kids.
right.
This guy's brain is spilled on the back of a car. That's not, you don't want to expose them to that. Like I said earlier, I know I sound like I'm contradicting myself. Exposing them to stuff in a way to protect them, you can do that without the gory details. You can do that without being so, real about it, right? You can still be truthful and honest, but in a way that still preserves them, from that kind of stuff. That's not stuff they want to think about or see, So I think it's important that we understand that choosing to leave is different than quitting, because you know what? There were a lot of nuclear operators who took their lives instead of going to medical or whoever it was and saying, hey, I need to separate for mental health or re-rate me. People feared being undesed or a different rate in the Navy, not because of just how the job would change, but because of the idea of being a nuke dropout. They call it sadding out. You're a sad boy, because you claim depression or suicide. There are a lot of people who I don't have respect for who faked mental illness to get out of the nuclear Navy because they knew that at the time you could get out. Same with the ship I went to. They were more lenient with who they let out because of all the suicides and murders. We had a guy kill his wife on our ship.
Oof.
It was bad. So I don't have respect for people who malinger or fake mental health to get out. But the fact that it has created this fear of, because when I first got in the military, I got flagged for mental health the first day at nuke school because they had you fill out a survey, and it was like, do you want to be on a submarine? No. Do you want to be in the Navy? No. Do you want to be a nuclear operator? No. I said no. I was truthful. I said no, I don't want to do any of this stuff. So I got flagged, and this like counselor talked to me. She said, you got flagged because of strange and bizarre answers.
Telling the truth is strange, huh?
Right. And she offered for me to get out. And the reason I didn't was because I said, well, what is my family going to think? What is, and that's a big thing that a lot of people go through in the military, well, especially when it comes to the nuclear community, right? It's, oh, I guess you failed. You couldn't be a nuke, or, you're a sad boy, this and that. But to take your life instead of deal with the opinions of your families and friends, that always bugged me a lot. I get the people who are suicidal, who were actively deployed in combat, who are first responders, who dealt with a lot of the military lifestyle, but nuke school itself, over the academics. Now, if it was over the lifestyle, I understand, right? Because that's the military aspect. But struggling in the school, now nothing is worth taking your life over, but that always perplexed me more than anything. And the fact that you rather take your own life than have your mom or dad say, we knew you couldn't make it, or we knew you weren't going to be a nuke, or, I guess you're not smart enough. I mean, that just always bugged me, but I've also been there. I chose to stay in the Navy when I was first offered to get out because of what was my family going to think? You made it through boot camp. You also have that opinion of, you made it through boot camp, right? You can make it through this. And even some people re-enlist because they're like, well, why, they're scared of people saying, why didn't you re-enlist? Oh, I guess you couldn't do it, you know? And I never, and I think even in the civilian world, there are a lot of people who stay in their job because the idea of quitting is such a negative stigma. But, choosing to leave to prioritize yourself, I mean, that is very different, and this, especially for men, we could talk about how a lot of men especially don't want to quit more than anyone because of all the pressure on them that it makes them even more, because a lot of men will tell their wives, go ahead, quit your job, but how many wives, like you said, will tell their husband quit their job?
Right.
It's a very, very different thing and more difficult for men, because saying, hey, I left for mental health reasons, I mean, I don't often share that, even because, there's a lot of stigma around that, there's a lot of different stereotypes. There's a lot of different things, especially as men. I'm sure you've had a lot of episodes on that yourself.
Yeah, I mean, we could literally do probably 5 episodes alone on men and mental health and what the stigma is and why it's so important to, take care of your mental health. And essentially, this is everything that I believe in and advocate for. And this is why I'm very open about everything I've been through, everything that's happened to me, the dark thoughts, the holding a gun in my hand, wondering if I was going to take my life, because I think it's important to know that people aren't alone. And I think maybe for you, even if like it was kind of invisible, I think that maybe in the back of your head, you knew that if you got out, you'd have to go back home to a bad situation. And this was just still, it's kind of, I know you've heard this term before, choose your hard, right? You could choose
Mhm.
the hard of going back to your family and being miserable, or choose the hard of being miserable, but at least having independence in the Navy. And I think that's the hard you decided to choose at that time. And I commend you for that. Um, we're gonna have to do like 5 more episodes talking about everything else because we're going deep
Yeah.
and time is getting long. I gotta know before I ask you where people can find you and give you that final question. What's the deal with the cowboy hat? How did that happen?
Yeah, so this ties into the very nature and identity of Mr. Whiskey and Couple of Nukes, and it all starts with the same woman who broke my heart so bad I ended up 6% behind.
Wow.
Um, I decided I didn't. That was the most I've ever cried in my life. Just nonstop. I didn't eat for 2 weeks straight. I was lethargic.
Wow.
I got sent home from work because I couldn't stop crying. Like, it was bad. It was really bad. I've never been through something like that. I've been through a lot of heartbreaks. Trust me. I've fallen in love with drug addicts and strippers and the like. And
I bet you've broken a lot of hearts too, bud.
yeah, I try not to, but yeah, I ended up 6% behind because I just could not work. I could not concentrate. And buddy was trying to cheer me up, of course, and I ended up like, I was like, I was so sad. I ended up buying this Godzilla PlayStation game, and people who follow my stuff know I love Godzilla. And it was $500 almost. It was like $485 because there's only a few of them in the whole world. And
Wow, that's very limited.
yeah, I always said I would never buy that game. No way I would spend that much money on a PS4 game. And why didn't they just make more of them? And but I was so sad I did that. And then the shopping therapy continued because we went to this magical, mystical place called Boot Barn, not a sponsor. And when I went there, I was like, wow, look at all this cool stuff. And wow, everything's super expensive. And I bought this jacket for about 300 or so dollars for riding horses. I've never been on a horse in my life, but it looks really cool. And it's used for my photo shoot for my Weeping Prophet album coming out hopefully sometime. And I got that, and I got the hat to match some of the apparel because I had a janky cowboy hat from different story for a different time. And I never wore it ever really. I was never one who dressed Southern style. When I started the podcast, I was still active duty, and we did a lot of military mental health in the beginning, and sometimes that meant leadership wasn't portrayed positively. Sometimes Navy medical wasn't portrayed positively, and we were like, "Is there something in the paperwork that says we can get trouble for this? Does the UCMJ say I can be mastered for this?" And so, since I was still active duty on my way out, we decided Petty Officer Hennessy would become Petty Officer Whiskey. So that was that. I became Mr. Whiskey, and I was audio only. I was totally anonymous, and that was
Awesome.
the plan for life. When I ended up going to Podfest, this conference, well, now I'm a person. I'm not just a voice in an anonymous name. I'm now a person, but I still wanted to be anonymous. I didn't want people to know me. So I had the hat was supposed to be like in the Marvel movies where they put on the ball cap
Like
and so no one knew.
Superman, that was your
Yeah,
glasses?
exactly. No, literally, when I don't have my hat on, I'm not Mr. Whiskey. That's kind of how it worked at first. And so went to this conference. I'm Mr. Whiskey. No one knows the real me. It's funny. I wear it so much that at some conferences when I took it off, people didn't recognize me. I was able to sneak around. Like people were like, "Who is that guy?" And he looks familiar, but I can't put my finger on it. It really was a Clark Kent Superman thing. Like the hat made a difference. People think I'm bald sometimes. That's funny too. I'm not, hopefully, and hopefully it stays that way for a while. But yeah, the hat became, the kind of the look. And then when I started YouTubing as well to have my podcast as video, I wore black sunglasses and a hat so no one would recognize me. I don't think it works I guess it worked well enough. But over time, I started living this double life where when I wasn't Mr. Whiskey, I was no one. I was this guy who walked his dog. I had no friends, no family, no civilian life. But when I was Mr. Whiskey, I was the life of the party in terms of I was podcasting with people around the world. I was speaking at these conferences. I was meeting people. Everyone valued what I had. And all of Mr. Whiskey's memories were the same as my memories, but Mr. Whiskey didn't have a lot of the baggage that I had in real life. And so became these two lives where when I wasn't Mr. Whiskey, I was depressed and suicidal. I had no life, you
Mm.
know. And so I would record 10 hours a day with people because it kept me alive. It was like I needed to stay Mr. Whiskey. And eventually coming up on the podcasters cruise that happened down the new media cruise, I knew that people were going to see me without my hat and people might get exposed to my real name just because of the paperwork with the cruise. And so I made an episode that came out to share my identity, but I didn't really promote it because I didn't want people to know, kind of just to cruise people. That was the first time people saw me without the hat. I mean, over time, it kind of I rarely ever do content without my hat. It's like if Mr. Whiskey has his look. Sometimes I'll post stuff without a hat, like when I'm at the gym wearing battle fitted. I don't always have my hat on because I'm embarrassed to wear it in the gym. When I'm at home doing battle fitted stuff, I have my hat on. I'll do my push-ups with my hat on. But yeah, so I kind of ended up having to combine my identities and brought me great peace, because I was living in a civilian world and like people didn't know about Mr. Whiskey. Now that I have a job to fund Couple O Nukes projects, I'm back to having two identities, and it's hard sometimes at my job. I'm a manager of this company, and all the employees there just think they consider me a no one. They say he was a nuclear operator and now he's a manager. What a step down. They don't know that I spoke on stage at Podcast Movement Evolution Chicago on suicide prevention and comedy. They don't know that I have almost 200 episodes, over 100 reviews, that I'm in the top, 2% global podcast, that I have books, that I do this stuff, that I'm talking to Coach Rob on a Thursday night. They don't know any of this stuff. And it's hard to live with that sometimes, having the two lives. And
You
I want to
can't wear
merge them back.
the hat at work?
That would be, yeah, yeah.
Why
I
not,
wore a
man?
cowboy hat at work and I got in trouble. So
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
this is why I like being my own boss, because I can wear as many hats as I want. But point being, it kind of just happened. Mr. Whiskey in the hat kind of just happened. I believe God had it all set up, way ahead of time. When I look at every event in my life that lined up, it's all, perfectly planned, and not by me, certainly not by me. And so it's kind of stayed, and Mr. Whiskey will always be my name and that'll always be my hat. I don't really respond to my real name. Very few people call it, very few people know it. But I do have an episode coming out. My season 8 premiere is going to be interviewing me and Mr. Whiskey. And I'm going to record multiple videos and edit it where Mr. Whiskey is here and I'm over there. We have different outfits and we're going to have someone interviewing both of us and talking about the different lives we've lived and where they have intersected and where they have not intersected and what the future is looking like. So that's going to be a big project, but it's something that I'm excited for. And hopefully that answered about the hat. It was because it was therapy shopping heartbreak, but it became a part of Mr. Whiskey's look, and it's staying. I grew up in North New Jersey, so most people would have never expected me to look like this, that's for sure. But I've been in the South a long time, and I always introduced myself in the military when they said, "Where are you from? What rate are you?" and all that. I always said Jersey by birth, Southern by heart, and that's true to this day.
That's amazing and awesome. And if I can help you and I'm not too busy, I would love to be the guy to interview both personas, and help you do that project. And I mean, now I want to do another episode talking about how personas can help us overcoming trauma. Like I never thought of that. And now I want to do another podcast and wear a Darth Vader mask all the time and just hide my face, wear a full cosplay Darth Vader and talk. But
Yeah.
I think personas are important. I think they can become our reality. Besides my wife and kids, I mean, literally everybody knows me as Coach Rob. And when people
Yeah.
on the show, they're like, "Who do you go by?" I'm Coach Rob. Like that does not get turned off. I am Coach Rob all the time, every day, all day.
Yeah.
And that just came from my gym. When I owned the gym, they would call me Coach Rob, and I just, as I was doing videos and posting and everything, it just became my identity, and that's who I am. Even in my emails, see my emails. It says Coach Rob. Like that's who I'm going to be for probably the rest of my life. Man, we've had amazing. I want to keep going, but I just don't
Yeah.
have the
Yeah.
I just don't have the time. We'll have to do, like I said, more episodes because we talked about a lot, man. And I really appreciate you being on the show, and I appreciate that we have this networking relationship. We somewhat have a friendship. You're down the street in Georgia. Hopefully, I can go to some now that I didn't know about like podcast cons and stuff. Hopefully, I can go to some of them and we can link up and stuff and like get lunch and hang out. Um, where can people find you and link up with you?
Yeah, so coupleonukes.com, coupleonukes.com. That's my website. And I always put that forward because it has all my social media handles, all the ways to contact me. If you want to be on my show, if you want me on your show, or if you just want to connect, I love connecting with people and you just want someone to talk to, you can reach out to me on there. And then it also has every episode of my show organized into different sections. So if you want to focus on mental health, if you want to focus on suicide prevention, sleep hygiene, physical fitness, if you want to focus on just Vietnam War stories, I have it all categorized
Wow.
so that anyone who goes to my show can find what they need efficiently and get the help they need. Same with all my guests are organized from addiction experts to Marines to first responders so that people can find what they need. And look, it's not about my show. First of all, I call this God's show, and I do everything I do is for him and through him and him through me. My guests are great resources, and if their stuff is better for you than mine, by all means. But I want to make sure I have those there for you to access. So whether it's their books or their shows or mine, my website has all of that for people to build a global community, to network, and to get resources. So coupleonukes.com to find something. There's we can always improve some part of our life. You know, you can never stop learning. And so that's why I encourage you to keep listening to this show, to check out my show, my website, to find other shows and books and resources to get some wisdom from.
Do you remember what category is Coach Rob in on your show?
He is in Navy. If you want to check out that episode, he is in the Navy show. And I'll probably add him to the first responder in section as well. They're all kind of, the military one is kind of military and first responder, but he'll be under both. And he's also under physical fitness because he is battle fitted, you know. So he's there. There's I don't have a picture of him running through the mud, but I do have some good professional headshots of him where it says Rob Wheeler and he's looking up into the sunset with a yellow background. So yeah, you are on my website, and I'm hoping to have you on there in the future for some more stuff as well.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be doing a live show here soon on Tuesday nights, and I'll have you on with my co-host for some lives, and maybe even I'm thinking of doing like different co-hosts. So you'll probably be like my co-host on a couple shows, and I love talking to you and connecting with you. Like your charisma, your character, it's amazing. So guys, check out his website, and before we close out, and check out his podcast. Definitely listen to the Coach Rob episode. Um, Shameless plug.
Yeah.
Before we close out the show for the evening, what is your definition of turning pain into progress?
I think that is so important. Like you said, you talked about people joining the military. Hey, take the good, focus on the good. And I definitely agree. I talked today, people were like, because I was on several shows today. They said, what's your relationship like with your parents? How has that trauma affected you today? How did the military affect you to this day? And the answer, I would sum it up as pain into progress, right? I had a lot of trauma with my family, with the military, with everything in between, with the civilian world. That was an adjustment, you know, in terms of identity, in terms of social culture, in terms of lifestyle, all of that stuff. I have taken it and I don't sit in it and have a pity party or a victim mentality, right? The stuff we talked about today sounds like, yeah, all I do is rant about my bad time in the military, right? On these shows, when I'm asked those questions, I do. But in real life, every day, that's not who I am or what I talk about. I talk about it in the context of recovery, of resources, and of helping, right? So my show would not exist to the extent, while it's about highlighting the guests, my knowledge and input comes from all of that I've been through, all the healing that I've been through, and all of it. I use it all as a medium through which to connect with others. So that pain into progress, what that looks like for me personally, and what it can look like for all of y'all as well, is what you've been through and how you recovered from it, even if you're still recovering from it, spreading that forward. You know, you can turn it into progress in the gym through physical exertion. You can turn it into creative artworks like sculptures and painting. And I think those are great mediums. But I think the best thing we can do is spread it to other people as information for them to then take it to the gym or take it to the artwork or take it to their podcast, right? Passing along knowledge. So the lessons cultivated from that pain, again, not teaching people to hide from it, not protecting people from it in the sense that you keep them oblivious and not victimizing yourself, but taking that trauma, the lessons from it and the good from it and turning it into progress.
Guys, that's amazing. And Coach Rob's final thoughts is simply choose your hard, right? Life is hard. It's not easy, no matter who you are. Even the most famous, most rich, most powerful people have bad days, have hard things, and bad things happen to them. But you have to choose your hard. Do you want to choose the hard of being miserable, angry, upset, sad, emotional, out of control, angry, frustrated, depressed? Or do you want to be a winner, happy, loving, caring, good father, good mother, good parent, a good member of the pillar of your community? You can choose. Now, neither one is going to be easy, but one has better results. One has better impact on your emotional, on your relationship, on everything you're going to deal with. both myself and Mr. Whiskey, we didn't choose to stay in the bad. It would have destroyed us. We've just talked here for an hour and 24 minutes about all the bad things that could have ended our life, that could have saw us in jail, that could have put us on the backside of life. And me being currently 48 this year, I wish I learned all this sooner, because I am so happy. I am so proud of everything I'm doing. I'm so grateful the gifts that God gave me that I'm able to use to impact my community and help others and speak to others. And when you serve others from a place of love and care, wonderful, beautiful things will happen to you, just like me and Mr. Whiskey networking, and be able to have these tough conversations honestly and openly to speak about them. So choose your heart. Guys, this has been another episode of the Battle Heart Podcast. Definitely, we're going to be doing multiple episodes, bro. I love talking to you. Like, the energy is always there. I appreciate you being here. And like I like to say to everybody before we end the show, remember to always be fit for battle. Thank you.
You've just heard another battle-tested conversation. Now it's time to take action. If this episode lit a fire in you, subscribe on Spotify, Apple, iHeart, or YouTube, so you never miss a moment that could change your life. Want to go deeper? Connect with Coach Rob at BattleFittedBrand.com for coaching, gear, and tools to help you turn your pain into progress. Remember, life will test you, but you're built to battle harder. Until next time, stay locked in, stay ready, and keep showing up.